Callista Carter once believed that love could conquer all. When she married Louis Prescott, a highly successful and admired businessman, she thought she was stepping into a fairy tale romance. But 2 years later, she realized just how wrong she had been. Louis was not the husband she had dreamed of. He had never touched her, never looked at her with the eyes of a man in love. Day by day, she found herself trapped in a cold, lifeless marriage, where love existed only in name. From the outside, they seemed like the perfect couple, a powerful businessman with an empire at his feet and a sophisticated, accomplished woman thriving in the publishing industry. But behind the doors of their luxurious New York penthouse, Callista was nothing more than a wife on paper, a forgotten shadow in her own life. She had tried everything to reach Louis, to make him love her, but every effort was met with silence. His indifference was not temporary, it was a deliberate choice. And then, one night, when Louis carelessly left his phone on the kitchen counter, Callista stumbled upon a truth she was never prepared to face. A truth that would shatter the last fragile hope she had been holding on to. This marriage was not just cold, it was a lie. And now she had to face the reality that perhaps Louis had never loved her at all. Callista couldn't remember the last time Louis touched her. No embrace, no kiss, no whispered words of love. They shared a home, but not a life. Every night, she lay alone in their vast bed, listening to the ticking of the clock, a cruel reminder of the loneliness that consumed her. Meanwhile, Louis returned late, the faint scent of unfamiliar perfume clinging to his shirt, sometimes not coming home at all. She had once believed it was her fault. She had tried everything, changing herself, becoming the perfect wife, waiting for him, hoping he would see her. But Louis never cared. Then, one fateful night, he made a mistake. The man who was always so careful with his phone left it on the kitchen counter. Callista was not one to invade someone's privacy. But when the screen lit up, revealing a message that no wife should ever have to read, something inside her cracked. "Last night was incredible. I can still feel you on me. When can I see you again?" Her heart stopped cold. With trembling hands, she unlocked the phone, only to be met with an avalanche of similar messages from women she didn't know, words of love and passion that were never meant for her. Everything fell into place. The late nights, the lies about endless meetings, the distant, emotionless glances when she tried to reach for him. Louis hadn't just betrayed her. He had stolen 2 years of her life, making her believe in something that was never real. Fury and heartbreak waged war inside her as Louis walked into the kitchen, looking at her with mild curiosity, as if her world hadn't just crumbled to dust. "How could you do this to me?" Her voice trembled, not just with pain, but with a strength she had never known before. Louis merely raised a brow, then smirked. "Do what?" Callista threw the phone at him. "Don't play dumb, I saw everything." Louis glanced at the screen and then shrugged. No guilt, no remorse. "Did you really think I married you for love?" His laugh was mocking, cold. The world tilted beneath her feet. "Then why?" she whispered, fists clenched so tightly her nails dug into her palms. Louis sighed as if this conversation bored him. "My father wanted it, a polished wife made for good press, and you were easy, compliant, no drama." The words cut deeper than any blade ever could. She was never his love, only his convenience. But this time, the pain did not turn to tears. It turned to clarity, to rage, to a decision. That night, Callista packed her bags and walked away from that penthouse. Louis didn't stop her. No apologies, no regrets. And as the door shut behind her, she knew she was never coming back. Callista walked away from her marriage with Louis, but she had no idea where to go or what to do next. The apartment she rented was much smaller than the luxurious penthouse she once shared with Louis, but at least it was hers. Everything inside it was chosen by her, from the soft pastel curtains to the bookshelves filled with novels she loved. And yet, despite her newfound freedom, she felt empty. Every night, as silence filled her new home, Callista wondered, had she made a mistake leaving? Was this loneliness any better than the cold indifference she had endured? Those questions haunted her until he appeared. Sebastian Hale. The first time Callista met Sebastian was at a publishing gala where he had commanded the entire room with his confidence and authority. As the CEO of Hale Media Group, Sebastian was admired and feared, a man of intellect, precision, and undeniable power. But what most people didn't know was that Sebastian had been watching her for years. He had noticed her 2 years ago, before she married Louis. He had wanted to approach her, to speak to her, but when he saw the unwavering hope in her eyes as she looked at Louis, he had forced himself to walk away. Sebastian was not a man who took what wasn't his. But now, everything had changed. When news of her divorce spread, Sebastian knew his time had come. They ran into each other for the first time in years at a quiet cafe in the heart of the city. Callista sat by the window, absent-mindedly stirring her coffee, lost in thoughts that led nowhere. She barely noticed the shadow that fell over her table. Until she looked up. Sebastian Hale stood before her. "I heard about the divorce." His voice was deep, steady, yet laced with something restrained. Callista blinked. They had never been close, but the way he looked at her now felt anything but distant. "News travels fast," she murmured, forcing a small, detached smile. But Sebastian wasn't here for empty words. He studied her for a long moment before speaking again, and his next words completely shattered her composure. "Work for me?" Callista froze. "What?" Sebastian leaned back, his gaze sharp yet unreadable. "You need a job. I need someone I can trust. It makes sense, doesn't it?" She hesitated. Yes, she needed work, but why him? Why now? "I don't need saving," she said carefully, watching him closely. Sebastian smirked, but it wasn't amusement. It was something far more dangerous. "Maybe not," he murmured, his voice dropping just enough to send a shiver through her. "But you need someone who actually sees you." And in that moment, something shifted inside her. For the first time in a long time, she felt seen. And maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as broken as she thought. Working under Sebastian Hale was unlike anything Callista had ever experienced before. Sebastian wasn't just a powerful CEO, he was a force of nature, a man who commanded every room he stepped into. He exuded absolute control, but with her, that control seemed to crack a little more each day. At first, Callista tried to keep her distance. While Sebastian had given her a new path, she couldn't ignore the silent tension between them. Every time he passed by, she felt his eyes on her, heavy, searing, filled with an unspoken hunger. At first, she thought she was imagining it, but soon, it became undeniable. It was in the way they stood too close, in the way he always found an excuse to keep her working late, in the way his jaw clenched every time another man dared to speak to her. Sebastian was a man of control, but with her, that control was unraveling. And then, on a late night, the game ended. Callista was still at the office, focused on finalizing a report, when she felt him behind her. She didn't turn, but she could feel the weight of his gaze on her skin. "If I were your husband, I would have never left you alone." The words made her heart stutter. Slowly, Callista turned to face him, pulse racing. Sebastian leaned against her desk, his gaze dark, intense, filled with a desire he could no longer suppress. "Sebastian," she started, but before she could finish, he pushed off the desk, taking slow, deliberate steps toward her, forcing her to look up at him. "Say my name again, Callista." His voice was low, husky, a dangerous whisper. She forgot how to breathe. She should have stepped back, should have kept her distance, but she couldn't. And then he kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It was a declaration, a release, a vow that he wasn't holding back anymore. His hands framed her face, pulling her deeper, making sure she felt every ounce of the hunger he had been restraining. Callista should have pushed him away. She should have fought it. But instead, she kissed him back with everything she had. Because for the first time in her life, she felt truly wanted. And Sebastian Hale was not a man who would let her run away again. From that moment on, Sebastian didn't let Callista run anymore. The air between them shifted. No more stolen glances, no more hesitant touches. Everything was clear now. This was no longer a game but a declaration. Sebastian wanted her, and Callista couldn't deny that she wanted him too. Everything came to a head at the company's gala. Callista wore a sleek black dress, her beauty commanding attention from everyone in the room. But no one looked at her the way Sebastian did, his gaze sharp, possessive, as if she had always been his. Then, Louis arrived. He smirked as he approached, eyes gleaming with mockery. "You moved on quickly, Callista. Barely divorced and already with another man?" Callista tightened her grip on her wine glass, humiliation simmering in her veins. But before she could respond, Sebastian stepped between them. His presence was unshakable, commanding. "She's none of your concern anymore, Prescott." His voice was cold steel. Louis chuckled darkly. "You know, Sebastian, she was still a virgin when I left her." Callista froze. But Sebastian only smiled. The smile of a man who had already won. His strong arm wrapped around her waist, pulling her flush against him, and in front of Louis, he kissed her. Not a soft kiss, but a claim, a warning, a promise. When he finally pulled away, his gaze never wavered from Louis. "That just means she was always meant to be mine." Louis had nothing left to say. He turned and walked away, but the taste of defeat would never leave him. And as the door closed behind him, Sebastian turned to Callista, his eyes no longer cold, but burning with unspoken desire. "You're mine, Callista," he whispered. "You always have been." And this time, she didn't want to run anymore. Sebastian never let her go again. After that night, there was no distance left between them. He kissed her like she was the most precious thing he had ever held, touched her with tenderness yet unwavering possession. Callista had never been loved this way, with passion, devotion, and an intensity that consumed her whole. And then, one day, Sebastian took her breath away completely. He brought her to a secluded beachside villa, where the waves crashed gently against the shore, and the sunset painted the sky in hues of gold and crimson. They sat on the balcony, glasses of red wine in hand, the ocean breeze tangling through her hair. Callista gazed out at the water, lost in thought, until she felt his eyes on her. She turned, and her heart stopped. Sebastian was kneeling before her, a stunning ring held between his strong fingers. "Marry me, Callista, not because it's the next step, not because it's expected, but because you know, deep down, that you belong with me, that you were always meant to be mine." Her breath hitched. "Sebastian..." But he didn't let her hesitate. His hand tightened around hers, his gaze holding everything she needed to know. "I don't want just a part of you." His voice was deep, steady, yet almost urgent. "I want it all. I want to wake up to you every morning, to be in every dream you have. I want forever, Callista." Tears welled in her eyes. She had once believed in love, had once been broken by it, but this time she knew this wasn't just another beautiful illusion. Because Sebastian didn't just love her, he worshipped her. Callista smiled through her tears, squeezing his hand. Yes, and as Sebastian slid the ring onto her finger, as he pulled her into a kiss beneath the golden light of the setting sun, Callista knew this was the best decision she had ever made. Callista's wedding day was nothing like the last one. This time, she wasn't a bride filled with doubt, trying to be enough for a man who never truly saw her. This time, she knew she was loved. The white gown hugged her figure perfectly, intricate lace details woven into every inch like it had been made just for her. When she looked in the mirror, she saw a different woman, one who was cherished, worshipped, and stepping into a marriage not out of obligation, but out of destiny. The grand doors swung open, and at the end of the aisle, Sebastian Hale stood waiting for her. He was dressed in a sharp black suit, tall and commanding, but his eyes held only one thing: her. Callista's heart pounded against her ribs as she took slow, steady steps toward him. Everything else disappeared. It was just her and the man who looked at her like she was his entire world. When she placed her hand in his, she felt warmth, protection, and the deep, unwavering love he held for her. His voice was steady, yet thick with emotion as he vowed, "From the moment I saw you, I knew you were meant to be mine. And today, in front of the world, I vow to love you, cherish you, and protect you, not just for this lifetime, but for every lifetime to come." Those words weren't just vows. They were a promise etched into his soul. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Sebastian didn't wait a second longer. He pulled her into a kiss, deep and possessive, a kiss that wasn't just love, but a declaration to the world that she was his, forever. And when he whispered against her lips, his voice rough with emotion, "I've waited for this moment for so long, Callista, and I will never let you go." She smiled, squeezing his hand, knowing this was the beginning of forever. 3 years later, Callista never thought happiness could feel this complete. She woke up to the soft glow of morning sunlight filtering through sheer white curtains. Beside her, Sebastian was still asleep, one arm draped over her waist as if even in his dreams, he couldn't bear to let her go. She smiled, but before she could fully enjoy the quiet moment, a burst of laughter echoed from outside the door. "Mommy, Daddy." The bedroom door flew open, and their two little angels, Leo and Leanna, came running in, their brown curls tousled from sleep, bright eyes gleaming with excitement. Sebastian groaned, burying his face in the pillow. "No way! It's too early!" Callista chuckled, but before she could respond, Leo leapt onto the bed, while Liana climbed onto Sebastian. "Wake up, Daddy! You promised to take us out today," Liana reminded him, her tiny hands trying to tug the blanket away. Sebastian sighed, but the soft smile tugging at his lips betrayed him. He pulled both kids into his arms, pressing a kiss to their foreheads, before looking over at the woman he loved most in the world. "I guess my sleep is officially over," he smirked, his gaze filled with warmth. Callista laughed, resting her head against his shoulder as their children giggled between them. This happiness she knew would last forever.